Hey tankers, Taugrim here. This is episode 20 of my Road to Unicum videos, and I just reached Unicum WN8 for my account over the weekend, so I'm pretty psyched about that. Today we're looking at the M103, the Tier 9 American Heavy, and the stock suspension is actually good enough to mount the turret upgrade, the Top Gun, the upgraded engine, and all three equipment modules, so you don't have to ever research the tracks. The top turret is reasonably well protected, but the turret cheeks are a little bit soft at about 220 millimeters of armor. The Mantlet is very, very strong, and the edges of the turret from a frontal perspective are pretty much auto bounce. The cupola is very soft at under 110 millimeters of armor, and the side of the tank, the whole armor is also very thin, including this strip here above the tracks, which is not even 50 millimeters of armor. The other thing to note is that the turret relies on slope, not thickness, for protection. So as your turret is aimed to the side relative to incoming fire, you can see that the armor values are around 170 millimeters or less. So you want to be disciplined about turning your turret toward the tank that is firing at you next. Now, the stock turret, as we see here, does have much weaker cheeks, so in the range of about 195 millimeters of armor. And more importantly, the cupola is even taller, so it's a bigger weak spot. So you want to upgrade to the second turret as quickly as you can. The turret is better protected and you gain 100 hit points. You also want to try to play hull down as much as possible because the lower front glacis is under 200 millimeters of armor. This map was recently redone, so in the northwest and southeast there are brawling corridors, and this now prevents tanks from hanging out like around A4 and sniping the entire ridgeline leading down into the city. It used to be really easy for campers just to sit back there and deal lots of damage, and you'll see we'll spot a tortoise here hanging out in the back on their side sniping, but these hills in front of us are going to end up providing plenty of protection. So the M103 is, of the tanks that I played, one of the two that I feel is very incorrectly played by the general community, the other tank being the ELC AMX. And the M103 has really good gun handling and a very fast aim time of about 2.3 seconds, along with pretty good accuracy. So what this allows you to do is play this a lot like a snapshotting medium, but if you leverage the armor appropriately, you also have much better survivability than a medium. Now, this is the first time my playing on this map since the redesign, and I've pushed too far forward, and you can see I was trying to pull back but wasn't able to get behind hardcover fast enough. A lot of the American heavy tanks can only reverse at about 11 to 12 kilometers an hour, and it wasn't fast enough, and the Conqueror was able to aim in during my reload and hit me in the cupola. It's also a little bit reckless what I'm doing here in terms of engaging them at point blank range. Some of these imposing tanks like the Soviet heavies and the T-34 have really crappy gun handling, and you can see I've got 2 shells already through my cupola. So these people know where to shoot me, and if I'm engaging them at too close of a range, especially if I'm not wiggling my turret or my tank, it's going to be really easy for them to penetrate me. And this is one of the tanks where you don't want to wiggle your turret side to side, because I mentioned from the armor profile that the turret relies on slope, not thickness, to provide protection. The T-34 is staying mostly hull down. If he gets closer, I'll be able to take shots on his turret roof, and so I want to go ahead and back up. Now, this Conqueror is in a pretty tough spot. He just took fire from 3 different tanks, and that ridgeline where he is very steep. So in order for him to fire on us, he has to meaningfully expose his tank in order to be able to aim down. And I make a mistake. I basically thinking maybe I can get up here and just hit the top of his turret, and before I even am able to crest the hill, I take a shot from the tortoise and I'm able to bounce it because the angle is so steep. If the tortoise had waited probably another half second and I'd gotten up and over the lip, he could have penetrated me pretty easily. Now, I am two-shottable. I have about 800 hit points left. I've done about 1,200 points of damage, but basically I'm trading, and that's really not a smart thing to do in general, especially when you're top tier against lower tier tanks. And in my opinion, the time to start being you want to obviously conserve your hit points as much as possible, but you really have to be mindful of it once you get down into 2-shot land, because once, if I take another hit and I drop down 400 hit points, and a lot of tanks can one-shot me, and at that point I've lost all ability to be able to trade or take any kind of meaningful risk. Alright, so during that Conqueror's reload, is able to push up and finish off the IS-6. Now, the tough thing about, this corner of the map is that this is essentially was a 4 versus 2. We took out the IS-6, and this KV-4, I would really like to punish him during his reload, but he's covered by this T-34 on the one side of me, and then the Conqueror as well. And, like I said, I really don't want to take another hit and drop down into one-shot land. So I'm being patient. And part of, knowing this map, I think where I should have gone, this is the first time that I played the map since it was redesigned, was to go up along kind of C1. And right there you can see, there I'm taking advantage of the fact that I know my gun handling is much better than the T-34s. I'm kind of driving back and forth up and down the slope to kind of mess with his aim, and it gives me enough time to be able to aim at his turret roof and get another shot landed. So he's now down in one-shot territory, and I quickly turn my cupola to face the Conqueror and bounce a shell. So I started off really not playing very well. I'm playing much better right now. The main thing that I need to be mindful of is that since this is a 3 versus 2 in this compact area of the map, the T-34 keeps moving in a southwesterly direction. He's going to eventually have flanking shots on us. The side profile of this tank is very weak. The sides of the turret are very weak. So eventually I'm going to have to back up a little bit and deal with this T-34. And the Conqueror is really not too excited about coming up over the ridge. Every time he's done that, we've punished him. So thankfully, I'm able to back up without taking any fire and then finish off the T-34. And now this opens things up, so I can now hook around, and we have a 2 versus 1, the IS-6 and I against this KV-4. And the KV-4 has very poor gun handling. This M103 aims in about 2.3 seconds, which is really fast, and it's reasonably accurate. So what you can do against other heavies, especially at an intermediate distance like this, is snapshot them and quickly pull back into cover. And what will happen is, a lot of times as you're pulling back into cover right after snapshotting, they'll fire a shot that isn't fully aimed in, and if that inaccurate shot either goes into your mantlet or hits the sides of your turret cheeks, that's pretty much going to be an auto bounce. And it's also really hard to hit a cupola from an intermediate distance with an inaccurate gun. So it's a good way of protecting yourself. And I see a lot of M103 drivers not sufficiently leveraging the fast aiming capability along with protecting the weak spots. We have a 3 versus 1 isolation on the 416. Both of my friendly heavies are one-shottable, so we have to get rid of this 416, and he's pushing up pretty aggressively, and I let my friendly heavies know I'm coming over to support them. The 416 rushes up, he finishes off the FCM, but we get 2 shots in, and the 416 is now gone. Our light tank, this 1390, has been doing a pretty amazing job, and I heard the tortoise fire, so I know that he's not aiming toward me. He's pointing away at the 1390 before I even come up and over the hill to see that the tortoise is facing away. And both the IS-8 and I rush the tortoise. This is basically an opportunity for both of us to land 2 full damaging shots against him, and then the 1390 finishes him off. And what was really cool is I really appreciate the 1390 in a pug context, typing out, he's looking at me, and I knew this obviously, but I think it's really good communication. And we were able to take out the tortoise before that 152 was able to climb up out of valley, and now I'm going to hook to the left, the 1390 to the right. This battle is pretty much over because the 152 is a non-turreted tank and only aim his gun at one of us at a time since we're split up, and that will open up easy penetrating shots on the side of the tank for the other player on our side. I'm not terribly concerned about getting one shot because he'd have to get a pretty high roll, plus, I'm going to pull back as soon as I fire, and I actually missed that on the kill. I got a crappy damage roll. I do finish with an Ace Tinker Mastery badge and 4,900 damage total, so, after that slow start where I gave up 1,000 hit points to deal 1,200 damage, I did the next 3,700 damage without taking any damage at all. We're going to take one more look at the M103 in the next video, and then after that we'll cover the top of the line, the T110E5. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.